You see, we have, of course, we have done this many times, but let me just draw one more time. Well, we have seen this is the process of the involution, and the same thing happens, the process of evolution too. In the process of evolution. So there was this involution, which started with Satchidananda and comes down to the matter. Of course, it goes into inconscience, but we are not dealing with that. Now, when evolution began from matter, it took billions of years. There is a period of preparation, and when this matter is sufficiently prepared, to give you a very simple example of the birth of a child in the woman. The woman's womb is capable of giving birth, but it is not till the age of 12 or 13 when the woman, as we say in Indian language, matures. That means when the period, the menstruation begins. That means the womb of the woman is now ready to give birth. For the first 12 years when the menstruation did not begin, she was not ready. So that was the period of gestation, of preparation. So similarly, matter also undergoes the period of preparation and gestation. A moment comes when there is a menstruation begins in the woman. That means when the ovum is ready. That is a sign in the woman that she is ready to give birth, or the new creation can begin. So at that point of time, in the normal process, we have the union of the sperm and the ovum. The sperm comes from the man, from a different being. But when there is the union of the sperm and the ovum, then the process of the new birth begins. Similarly, in matter, after millions of years of preparation, there is the seed, as we may call, the life element seed descends into matter. There's always the descent of the higher into the lower. The seed of life principle descends in matter. Then matter gives birth to life. The same process continues. Life for millions of years brings its fauna, flora, whatever you want to call it. It prepares its womb. And then the seed of mind is dropped into life. And life brings out the baby, the birth of man or mind. And now you go ahead with the same principle. Mind also prepares for thousands and thousands of years. All its art and philosophy and occultism, that means the principle of mental consciousness has to mature. When it is sufficiently mature, that the seed of supermind drops into the mind. And then the mind gives birth to supermind. So there is eternally this principle of the descent of the involutionary principle into the evolutionary principle. It is not that it is automatically that evolution from matter to life and life to mind. It doesn't go in that way. There is always the descent of the higher into the lower. The higher means the involutionary process. And it is this descent, of course, on the level of the mind, before the supermind dropped in, there were other levels that dropped in, and this is what we call the 10 avatars or the 10 avatars. The story of Indian evolution not only begins here, it went right here. Where we have the first avatar is the Matsya avatar, the fish avatar. So you see, we have in Indian philosophy already got the secret of evolution as given by Sri Aurobindo. We say first there is the Matsya avatar, that means the divine coming as the fish. I mean, kind of, you may not understand biological how it's possible, but he was the first fish form. And then there is the question of the tortoise, the turtle. The turtle. The turtle is one which is there on land and on water. There is a bridging. Then there is a question of Varaha. Varaha is the what do you call that? The boar. The boar avatar. So which is equally good on land, which is very powerful. Then you see the boar, and then physically we have next the avatar that comes to the human being, the dwarf avatar, Vaman avatar. That means when the human being was a pygmy, where physically he was not developed. Then comes Parashurama, the vital energy. Then at a point comes Sri Ram, who represents, you see, what I want to tell you is, you may believe in these names or not, it doesn't matter. But what matters is philosophically that there are stages of evolution. And we have given to these stages of evolution a name and a form. But we see from this philosophical attitude of Avatar 2 that the Avatar comes at every major evolutionary level of this earth, not only of humanity, of earth itself. So it was he who brought the first fish and the first turtle and the first dwarf So Sri Ram represented the mental, and that too the sattvic mind, not the vital mind, not the intelligence, not the sensorial mind. It was the sattvic mind. So whole of Ramayana, you see, there is a sattva. But then, after Sri Ram, we have Christ, we have Buddha too, and then we have Sri Krishna. Yeah, but this is not historically that different, but a level of consciousness is different. Sri Krishna brought in the level of overmind. I mean, it's wonderful to see. Of course, we have got this clarity after reading Sri Aurobindo, but Sri Krishna is not the sattvic mind. You see a simple example, Sri Ram and Sita, they are one man, one husband, one wife. You come to Sri Krishna, one husband, 1,000 wives. The multiplicity begins. It is no more the moral sattvic saying one man, one woman. But there it is completely liberated. It's the level of consciousness where Sri Krishna, you see, Sri Ram, we don't have so much of Ananda, so much of delight. We don't have so much of dances on Sri Krishna and Sri Ram. But you see, Sri Krishna, in every dance form there is Sri Krishna. In every gopikas, in every rasa there is Sri Krishna. Because Sri Krishna represents the delight consciousness of the divine. So there is a delight in every form, in every movement, in everything that is happening in the divine, in human nature. So you see, these Indians have had a beautiful Dashavatara there. Now coming back to this principle that I want to align with what we have said, is this question of the descent of the higher into the lower. Now where I want to have brought in this is exactly where what I am explaining this, that here it says, if there were not this rising of man into the Godhead to be held by the descent of God into humanity, avatarhood for the sake of dharma would be an odious phenomenon, since mere right, mere justice or standard of virtue can always be upheld by the divine omnipotence through its ordinary means by great men or great movements. So he comes on. Now first let me finish this. So each of these we have given a name, and now the one who has brought the supramental seed to the mind is called Sri Aurobindo and the mother. It is not trying to say who is greater, who is lesser. Each one is bringing a principle needed for the earth's evolution at that time. Christ brought the psychic element, because that was what was needed after the vital development, after the mental development. What was needed was the psychic element in humanity. Just the sattvic mind is not the highest level. Beyond the sattva is the psychic being. But beyond the psychic being, on the mental level, because the mind Sri Ram brought in, but then the mind also has to develop. So the one who brings in the supramental seed to humanity is Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. And what is important, as Sri Aurobindo is telling us here, is each avatar prepares. Well, about the other avatars, we are not sure. But about Mother and Sri Aurobindo, we see that they have not come just for the sake of dharma, but it is for the rising of man into the Godhead. All the 17 volumes of the Mother, all the 35 volumes of Sri Aurobindo are exactly meant for this, so that man may rise into Godhead. He has put on our nature, so we may put on his. So in avatarhood, all this, the Westerners, the Western philosophy may reject, saying it's Indian philosophy. That's not important. You may accept or not accept. But what is of utmost importance in this is the main purpose of avatar is to lead humanity to the next level. But at the same time, we must remember that all of us need not follow the next rung of evolution. Not at all. What it means is that all of us need not follow the supermind. We need not follow that I want a supermind. No. There could be other levels of the divine manifestation here, or the divine manifestation here, divine manifestation on the levels of the mind. So each soul may choose it whatever it wants. So that is why some people turn to Sri Aurobindo, some turn to Christ, some turn to Buddha, some turn to Sri Krishna. It all depends upon what the psychic being wants. But I was explaining this from the angle of avatar. This is what he says. And then there is the question of what he's saying. This is why each incarnation holds before men his own example, that we have explained. And then it says that declare that the Son of Man and the Father above, from whom he has descended, are one, that is Christ. That Krishna in the human body and the Supreme Lord and Friend of all creatures are but two revelations of the same divine Purushottama, revealed there in his own being, revealed here in the type of humanity. So each Lord, each avatar has brought in one aspect. So as Christ has said, the Son of Man and the Father are one, Sri Krishna would say the Supreme Lord and He is the eternal friend of all creatures. So now the Lord comes as a friend. That's why in the Mahabharata we have Arjuna the friend. And to show us that the divine is perhaps closer to a friend than even to a devotee. That is this example of Bhagavad Gita. That there are many devotees in the Mahabharata who are devotees of Sri Krishna. But Sri Krishna is closest to Arjuna, the intimate friend. He calls him many a time, you are my best friend, and therefore I am revealing myself to you. So that's another aspect. So this is part of the avatarhood principle that we have here. And there is one more word before I close. I'd like to take up the question of where Sri Aurobindo says, where the Sri Aurobindo here has said that she incarnates as vibhutis. Now this is where, as all of you know, I can link up that question of the vibhutis here. You see, each avatar is followed by or preceded by vibhutis. I'll read the quotation later. A vibhuti is a divine incarnation who comes for a specific outcome or work in humanity. He doesn't come to elevate human consciousness. He doesn't come to bring in the next level of human consciousness. He comes to hasten, as we had John the Baptist, to announce Christ. You see, these are the people who announce, or sometimes it happens that after the avatar has come and gone, they continue the work of what the Lord has done. Because you see, human beings are not that open that when the Supreme Lord comes down, we absorb. No, it doesn't take place. Like we have in Christ the 12 apostles. You see, they were not all of them are vibhutis, but that's the work of a vibhuti, to absorb what the new consciousness has come or has been given and pass it on to humanity. Well, here, we have vibhutis galore in the west and east, and Sri Aurobindo has named quite a few. For example, Napoleon was one. For example, here Vivekananda was one. Shankaracharya was another. Augustus Caesar was himself an incarnation of Sri Aurobindo in one of his births. Jeanne d'Arc, she was an incarnation of the Mother as a vibhuti, not as an avatar. So we have names strewn all over from ancient Greek history to the present times. So all these people have added not a rung in human evolution, but a step towards the next rung. And of course we know especially about Vivekananda and Shankaracharya, that how they have hastened, they have brought back Hindu philosophy, Hinduism, or they have really helped the reincarnation or the renaissance of Hindu philosophy or the Vedantic philosophy. Had it not been for Shankaracharya, India today would have been a Buddhist country. So these people they take a birth to bring back this eternal truth that was Vedanta. That is important, that India should not become a Buddhist country. It should hold on to its Vedantic truths, because as Sri Aurobindo would reveal that it is the Vedanta that is the future of humanity. Vivekananda has declared it many a time. He has gone to the West and told Europe and America how the future realizations are all based on a Vedantic truth. So it was kind of a mission thing from destiny of India that it should not lose its Vedantic truths. So Shankara, a vibhuti of a divine consciousness, comes specifically to drive out Buddhism and to re-establish the Vedanta in India. You see, it is easy to say that in those days there was no communication, there's no TV, there's no book publication, nothing. And yet Buddhism was going so strong in the country, it has been already there for 1,000 years. So it was tremendously powerful. And also there was another religion that was coming parallel with Jainism, a very powerful religion. It was pre-Buddhist era. So a whole country was almost, if not divided equally, but very vehemently between Jainism and Buddhism. Vedanta was being shadowed out. So a single man revives. And after him, that was 9th or 10th century, again in 19th, 20th century, we have Vivekananda, who revives with Vedanta. Thanks to Sri Ramakrishna, not only revives it, takes it to the West for the first time. You see the movement of spiritual movement. Shankara revives Vedanta, Vivekananda gives Vedanta to the world, to the West at least, to the American audience, and now Sri Aurobindo says, it's not Vedanta, is not the ultimate. There's something beyond the Vedanta. He brings an integration between Vedanta and between Tantra and then Bhagavad Gita and then Shaivism. He makes an integral philosophy of East and West and Vedanta and Buddhism. So he has here a complete bouquet of all the best knowledge of the world, and he gives it to the world. Well, that is the work of the Vibhutis. And what Sri Aurobindo is referring to here, later on I'll read out, is that each of these Vibhutis is an incarnation of the Mother. That is how we relate here, that all these Vibhutis They are incarnation of one aspect of the mother. And you would be surprised, at least I was surprised when he said Napoleon is an incarnation of Maheshwari. I said, Maheshwari? I would say I could understand an incarnation of Mahakali. But no, he says he has, next time I'll find that sentence. He has great tribute for Napoleon. The way he conquered the world, the Western European world, and not brought in. The war was a means to establish a new wisdom of Maheshwari, a new law. What is the law of the Maheshwari? We will see. She establishes new ways of existence, new philosophies, new thinking. As Sri Aurobindo writes, she establishes new ways of creation itself. So what Napoleon contributed was a new law. We have got Napoleonic law, in France. But most of European culture today is based on this new wisdom aspect of Maheshwari, and Napoleon was a Vibhuti, Shankara of Vedanta, and Shankara, of course, was a Vibhuti of Shiva. You see, again the question of Shiva, we think somebody who is dynamic, energy and creation and destruction. But Shankara did not destroy anything, but he destroyed the old static Buddhism, and he brought back the Vedanta. So these are all things that are connected with the mother. So where I am connecting all this avatar and vibhutis, and what he has said, that she always comes back in new, that we can understand all this, he says, because we have powers, that she comes in embodiment that are understandable, he says, closer to humanity. The line that I've been explaining, just this. The mother is the consciousness and force, but something of her ways can be seen and felt through her embodiments. That's what I was trying to explain. This is page number 17 in your blue book. The mother is the consciousness and force of the Supreme, but something of her ways can be seen and felt through her embodiments, and the more seizable, that means human beings can seize and understand, because more defined and limited temperament. So she delimits herself. She is not in a transcendental aspect. And action of the goddess forms in whom she consents to be manifest to her creatures. And here there is one line. Somebody asked a question about the same line. They say, sweet mother, here I do not understand this. Well, if you have this blue book, you can open on page 186. But something of her ways can be seen and felt through her embodiments, etc. Then the mother says, this means, you see, that precisely there are different qualities, different ways of being, which manifest in different forms, and that each of these forms is one of the Godheads whom men have worshipped and whom they understand because of the limitations. Well, that's again, it will take next 1 hour to explain, but just tell you this much. The different ways of being which manifest in different forms, and that each of these forms is one of the Godheads whom men have worshipped. I quote right from Aditi to Christ to Senganiyama Koil in my street. All these, right from the goddess on your street corner to the Virgin Mary or to Tao or to the divine Aditi, they're all manifestations of the single consciousness called Aditi or the Mother. So she is saying that men have worshipped and whom they understand because of the limitations. You see, that is the beauty of this divine consciousness, that she does not manifest only as an avatar, as a big philosophy, as Virgin Mary or as Mother or Aditi or Kali. Because not every human being can understand that. So she comes down in more and more self-limited formations, so that she comes closer to you. So that, in my street, Kurchakupam, Vaithakuppam, there are no philosophers there, there are not many literary people there. So for them, they need a small God, a small in the sense, not in the size, but somebody whom I can approach, I can identify myself, I feel and pray to. If you say, pray to the divine Aditi, he says, I don't know. But if I say, this Sengani Amma Koil, so this Amman is nice, and what is that this thing? She blesses you, she'll give you marriage, this thing, she'll give you a bit of job, and that's very good. But I do not have this transformation and all. You see, but that is where the thing begins. The divine gives you a lollipop first, and when the child asks for a lollipop, you give it, and then from the lollipop you'll come to the Cadbury, from the Cadbury you'll come to something else, and then at a point when you grow up a little wiser. Say, I don't want all this material thing, the cars and the houses and all that. And then she says, I want something more. Something that does not exist in this material world. That's what the great Amal Kiran told the mother when he met her the first time. He says, I have had everything in this life, but now I want the psychic. I've had all the kicks in my life, but now I need a psychic. That means all the kicks, that as a modern word, kick means you really get everything of this material world. But he says, I want the psychic being now. So that is the evolution which began with a lollipop. And that is what Indian philosophy and spirituality says. The divine comes down to each one's level and weans you out from there. So there's nothing wrong in asking for a lollipop, or asking for a house, or asking for my daughter's marriage. Nothing. The divine gives and gives and gives. And at a point says, okay. But now you said, oh God, give me yourself. I have had everything of your world, but not of you. That is the transition. That is when you are entering a spiritual life. When you want things of God, you are in religion. When you want God Himself, you have come to the doorway of spirituality. And that's again the essence of Mahabharata. I mean, you can search everywhere, you will see the same truth. So Mother is telling us, when something is limited, it is more easily understandable for man than when it is unlimited. For man has a limited nature, and it naturally understands what is limited. And so, to be comprehensible, things must be divided and limited. Otherwise, the power in its essence, which is indivisible and unlimited, is absolutely above human comprehension. For man, as he now is in his present state. I mean, I would explain further this sentence in our next class, because that would take me a long time. But it's a great clarification, where what Mother is telling us, that when something is limited, it's more easily understandable. For man has a limited nature, and it naturally understands what is limited. But what is the meaning of this limitation? What is the process of this self-division? And how small the divine can become in order to reach us, the small little human beings. But that is where you marvel at the structure of the divine becoming. So let's not say God, and our great famous Sachin, whenever he has 100, he shows the bat up there as if God is upstairs there. But God is not just up there. So you will see in India, in the West, I've seen when I was traveling through Greece, there are roadside little temples there. On the highway, they're not temple, but a little structure to denote something to the God. On the highways itself. And here also you will see. And there are some temples when you go to Madras, in those old days I used to go, now on this highway I don't see. When the taxi driver would stop, he says, sorry madam, 2 minutes. He would go to the roadside temple, do some aarti, take the vibhuti, put it here and bring it to you also. The vibhuti. So what happens is this question of the divine in everything, for everybody, for each purpose. Well, I'll tell that more. But now, last I'll take if you remember your question.
Yes, I really like this explanation, and to make it in a very simple way, To parallel this as the seed and the descent and ascent, would you say that it was the seed, it was spirit going into the inconscient which created matter, because matter is the one thing, could we just say spirit?
Spirit which came...
Put the seed in the inconscient.
Yeah, exactly.
And gave birth to matter.
Yeah, you see, that is a simple way, as you yourself say, it's a very simple way, yes. We could say it is the spirit that put the seed here. But in Sri Aurobindo, to birth to matter.
No, that's giving birth to life.
But the birth itself here, the first birth of matter.
Yes, but I would like to hear how you would express that. Where did that seed come from?
Yeah.
Just as a parallel like this.
There is a line, I'll tell you. Just yesterday I was taking, or day before, last week, taking a class at the knowledge, We came across a sentence called the inert soul and the somnambulist force. While he was explaining the evolution, he says the inert soul, S capital, and the somnambulist force. That is what you call spirit, which was lying in this inert soul and the somnambulist force. So they are embedded in the inconscient, and it is the somnambulist soul force which starts moving, which makes the first movement. And the soul is still inert, it's still not moving. But the somnambulism is still, there's a movement. It is unaware of itself. The sleepwalking, I'm not aware of myself, but I'm moving. So Sri Aurobindo would say the force, the somnambulist force, is what makes the first movement in the inconscient, and that movement becomes the matter. So it's a spirit, or in philosophically we call it the somnambulist force, and it is therefore Sri Aurobindo would say that force is what takes the precedent up to the level of mind, up to the level of man. Till the level of man, it is always the energy, the force that is predominant. The soul is inert, the consciousness takes the back seat, but force comes front seat. And from mind onwards is the consciousness that is there first, and then there is the force that comes next. So there is a reversal of the process of evolution itself from matter to man and man upward. That is why now Sri Aurobindo's emphasis on change of consciousness. That is, give precedence to consciousness and not to force, which could be vital force, mental force, physical force, whatever. He says, keep the force under the control of the consciousness. Bring out the consciousness first, otherwise is the force, the vital force that will be guiding you.
Where does science come into this discussion? For example, the discoveries of Einstein, etc., changed everything we knew.
Yeah.
Are these vibhuti or what? I don't know.
Yeah, he could be a vibhuti. We have not been confirmed, but one of those people who really give a push to the human sphere of knowledge. It could be politics, it could be science, it could be engineering, it could be art. Like Leonardo, though, he was everything. He was a scientist, a dramatist. He was an architect. So this push of a vibhuti includes even science. It does not exclude that. So our Einstein could be one who has really not only given a push to science, but he gives a new dimension to religion and understanding of God himself. So there is a kind of a combination in him. He was not a pakka atheist. There was the root of the divine within him. He doesn't express it, obviously. It is just science. But at the bottom line, he says there is the divinity, there is the intuition, there are other levels that are there. And you would be surprised. I was, again, thanks to my teaching at higher course, I'm revising my own Jainism. Jainism, one of the elements that I found very good was, it was not only a very practical philosophy, but one major thing was it was pluralism. What today we kind of emphasize upon, the plurality of notions, of religions, of opinions, of truth. plurality in its truth in its pluralism was emphasized long back pre-Buddhistic era in Jainism. So imagine this question of what we have, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, is not modern to India. It is as ancient as 11th century BC or 10th century BC. So Jainism, one of the two principles is ritual and realism and pluralism. And my students, I explain to them, don't go by your freedom of expression, don't take it as an American term or a European term. We had it 10th century BC, long before the Western world even knew the meaning of pluralism. So these are all philosophies that are coming back, but they have realized some central truth. And so we will be, now next time I'll concentrate. I'm sorry, I'm digging deeper, and as you get deeper, you find more diamonds down there. So I cannot go with these lines forward. Next time I will explain the same line, showing this line from another angle in a different way. Yeah, let's close it at that and have concentration.